Greetings. I have a friend. She told me a personal story of how her perception of solitude underwent a massive alteration. When she was in primary school, she had more than 2 close friends, very close friends, of which she enjoyed the company of. Well, that's after overlooking all the unnecessary girl drama, if you know what I'm saying. But when she first set foot on the grounds of high school, none of them were with her, not even a single one. Now, because she was used to being part of a social group, if you'd allow me to call it, just the thought of starting anew, trying to make friends, was nerve-wracking, as expected. She did not want to end up alone for mainly 2 reasons. Firstly, she did not want to be perceived as the loner by her peers. Secondly, because to her, solitude amounted to loneliness. No one wants to be lonely in high school. Now, what comes to mind just as I utter the word solitude? Is a placidness, peace and tranquility, or so as my mom would call it, me time. Or is a pariahdom, a state of deviance, or even loneliness. Solitude is a phenomenon that has been disregarded as a pivotal element to promote personal growth in an individual's life. It's no surprise, however, considering how our vastly tech-driven culture accentuates on socialization and having as many friends as you can. Take social media, for example. It's about how many followers you have, how many friend requests you've gotten, how many of them have you accepted. It's also about how much you are and feel compatible with members of your community or even people around the globe digitally. This is not a bad thing. Hence, this is not to imply that socialization and friendships are unimportant, but rather to evoke awareness of how the salience of solitude has been shunned by the manner in which socialization has been constantly emphasized on. Now, the irony of this lies in how technology is also slowly but surely pushing the human race towards a state of solitary. We shop online, do business online, we make friends online, we study online. We're practically going to find ourselves doing everything online in the future. And through this, we're involuntarily deprived of human contact. Now, when technology replaces in-person relationships, it has been found to increase loneliness, which Paul Tillich says expresses the pain of being alone, quite contrary to solitude, which he says expresses the glory of being alone. Now, this proves that solitude cannot and is not defined by loneliness. But society has painted solitude as a negative phenomenon. How so, you may ask? Jail, for example, where a prisoner is incarcerated and left alone in an often almost empty room. So there, solitude is used as a form of punishment, much like the also-famous naughty corner, where a child is deviated from the rest of the crowd, often left out of fun activities because of maybe misbehavior. Now, this channels the child's mindset into a negative perception of solitude, into perceiving solitude as an undesirable state, a state that one is forced to because of misbehavior or ill manner. Now, the constant emphasis on socialization has also led some people to perceiving those who do love and live a life of solitary as deviants and pariahs in society. And this has led some of the people who do value solitude into trying to avoid it, not because they negatively perceive it, but because they do not want to be negatively perceived. Speaking of avoidance of solitude, as I mentioned earlier on with the example of my friend, there are mainly 2 reasons why a person would want to avoid solitude. Because they do not want to be perceived as pariahs in society, and also because They just negatively perceive the state. Now, avoiding solitude effectively is usually at the cost of deserting your true self for an image merely composed of people's viewpoints on who you should be. How? Because you then long and desire to fit in. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, are familiar with the phrase fitting in, considering how paramount it has been made in an individual's life, especially the life of a youth. In fact, research proves that adults tend to appreciate and value solitude more than young people. I was just putting that out there. Now, a life of fitting in is not an easy one. Trust me, I know. Some parts of my childhood have been spent trying to fit in, and with every attempt, I realized that it did not matter how much I tried. There was always something dissimilar about me, something that others saw worthy of alteration. If it wasn't my albinism and appearance, it was my personality. If not my personality, it was back to my albinism and appearance. I can't change that, by the way. But with what I could change, which was my personality, it did not matter how many times I changed personalities trying to please people. Not everyone would find contentment in my presence. Not everyone's heart would be filled with glee just at the utterance of my name. This proves that you cannot collectively please everyone all at once, which, as confusing and impossible as it is, becomes a goal to someone who is avoiding solitude because of the fear of the state. Now, this all started when I was a child. When I was about 3 or 4 years old, I was a talkative child. I talked so excessively, my mom would be worn out just by listening to her daughter talk for hours. No human labor involved, just the use of hearing sense. But regardless of how much I enjoyed spending time with my mom, talking her ear off, trying to expose her to this beautiful, adventurous world that I was living in as a child, I knew each time she told me, Nana, Mommy needs some me time now. It was time to pack my things, play outside, and leave Mommy alone. Because I knew that me time was important to her. Unfortunately, I never understood why it was important to her. Hence, growing up, the first thing that would pop up in my mind when solitude was mentioned was, oh, I know that. Me time, yes. Aloneness, alone, me time, that's what my mom likes. But I never desired to feel what she was feeling. Hence, I fell in the trap of trying to fit in, as I mentioned earlier on. But it's when I felt I had lost myself in the crowd, trying to fit in, trying to please people, and interchanging so many personalities, that I started to long to feel what my mother felt in me time. Surely there was a reason why she'd voluntarily be alone. I mean, she had me. Who wouldn't want to have me around? Come on. It's baby me. But she wanted to be alone, and it was voluntary. There was a reason behind it. So I started to withdraw myself from the social influence, and then I found it. The profound meaning behind me time. It was a moment of self, where I could focus on my thoughts. It was a moment where my thoughts about myself actually mattered. I couldn't believe it. Wow, I did not need to please myself because I was pleased with myself because I was alone. And that is when I started to enjoy the state. And today, as we speak, I am an introvert because I found the profound meaning behind me time. Now, there are many positive outturns that research has exposed. But to your attention, I'd like to bring only 3, which I'd like to call self-add. Firstly, self-autonomy. How many of you have at least that one thing that you feel is a huge part of who you are, but you only feel comfortable doing it when you're alone? I know I have a lot of those. I have so many of those. Now, solitude gives you a chance to do those things without anybody judging you or pointing out flaw in it. People who hardly take time off their social life are usually largely influenced by the social perspective. Hence, their manner of conduct, manner of speech, even decision-making is largely influenced and determined by people's perspective on life. But in solitude, you're free to be you, where your manner of conduct, manner of speech, etc., is determined by you. You determine the person that you want to be, and you're free to be that person. A man can only be himself so long as he is alone. If he does not love solitude, then he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is truly free. Those are words of a German philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, who too saw the value behind solitude, which was freedom. Freedom to be you. Secondly, self-actualization. Now, in solitude, you're given the chance to discover your artistic, your intellectual, and so on, potentials, which create a huge part of who you are as an individual. You get to find assurance of the actuality of the person that you are. And you find contentment in discovering yourself. No one points out certain qualities of you, but you get to discover yourself in solitude, in placidness, in peace, aloneness, where no one is there but you. Lastly, self-development. He tends to expect too much from us, don't you think? They expect us to be this beautiful clay pot when we're really clay in the making. We're still being molded into this beautiful clay pot that we too want to be. Now, this deprives us of the chance to incrementally grow into the person, into the people that we are supposed to be without skipping any pivotal steps. But in solitude, you get to examine yourself and work towards growing without anybody telling you which direction to take to get to the destination of your improved self. You get to scrupulously scrutinize the person that you were in the past, the person that you are now, and the person that you want to be in the future. And then work towards being that person. You're alone. You call the shots. Now, to those who have a nice and vibrant social life, it's great to have people around. But take time off that social life of yours to rediscover yourself. And to those who are living a life of solitary, perhaps due to unfortunate circumstances such as social rejection, instead of drowning in self-pity, how about you take advantage of solitude to grow as an individual? Take time to experience self-add. Well, that is as you try and search for a social group that you will fit in without deserting any part of who you are. And to everyone else, let us all positively perceive solitude so that if it does happen that we find ourselves in the state, we only experience the positive outturns of it. My friend then joined a social circle she saw fit at that time, but because she felt she wasn't fully accepted, she stopped hanging out with them and joined another one until it just became a constant, never-ending cycle that wore her out. She told me something interesting while she was telling me the story. She said, you know, with each and every group that I joined, I realized that it did not matter to what extent I enjoyed their company. There was always this certain aspect of me that was to be deserted and foregone in order for me to fully be accepted. But it's when I discovered the beauty of solitude that I found my reclusive nature and the beauty in it. See, she found a part of herself she never knew existed. A part that will enjoy a state that she never wanted to live in the first place. You too can discover the positive outturns of solitude without anybody like me telling you the positive outturns. You too can experience self-add. You too can experience me time. It all lies in a positive perception of solitude. Thank you.